Leisure Suit Larry was one of Sierra's tentpole series in the late 80s and 90s that managed to put out half a dozen titles before the Sierra that most of us know splintered apart and the notable developers went their separate ways. This certainly was the case for Leisure Suit Larry series creator Al Lowe, and while subsequent games have carried the Leisure Suit Larry name, none of them had any affiliation with Al Lowe, and they kind of all range from mediocre to terrible. I actually kind of like Magnum Cum Laude, but we're not here to talk about games which are clearly out to cash in on an established name in the adventure gaming genre. We're here to take a look back and rank the original 7-ish games of the Al Lowe-produced Leisure Suit Larry series. Number 7. Leisure Suit Larry 4. We begin at the bottom with Leisure Suit Larry 4, The Case of the Missing Floppies, only because it's borderline unplayable. We don't give out stars on this channel, and it's just as well because this game wouldn't get any. Number 6. Leisure Suit Larry 5. Now getting into the playable portion of this Leisure Suit Larry series ranking video, we begin with Leisure Suit Larry 5, Passionate Patty does a little undercover work. The plot is the most outlandish in the series, which is no small feat, as mob boss Julius Biggs has stolen the discs of the previous game, rendering Larry an amnesiac, working for an adult film industry media company which has charged him with scouting models for a new TV show. Passionate Patty is approached by the FBI to use her musical talents to infiltrate 2 record companies accused of hiding subliminal messages in their songs. After Larry saves the lives of everyone on his flight by successfully landing the plane during an emergency, he and Patty are reunited at the White House. Yeah. Overall, the game feels disjointed as you switch back and forth between Larry and Patty for what feel more like a series of less than satisfying vignettes than a complete game. Neither character's individual arc had me especially invested, and the overall plot is forgettable. No pun intended. Something I personally found disappointing, and I fully acknowledge I could be on my own here, was how they handled the relationship between Larry and Patty. After all the work put into developing some very welcome chemistry between the two in Leisure Suit Larry 3, the fact that this is how they followed it up feels a bit like an insult to the fans. I chalk it up to the idea that they realized Larry had to get back to his swinging ways and, otherwise it wouldn't be a Larry game, and I can agree with that. I just don't particularly like the way they approached it. If they were just going to write Patty out at the end of this game and make their relationship an afterthought, I'd just assume not feature her at all in this game and give Larry another standalone story as per usual. I guess my criticisms are all kind of tied together for this one now that I think about it, but anyway, moving on. Number 5. Leisure Suit Larry 2. I have to give Leisure Suit Larry 2, Larry Goes Looking for Love in Several Wrong Places, credit for being arguably the most ambitious title in the entire series. Following up the relatively small world of Lost Wages, Nevada, the first sequel sees Larry nearly simultaneously winning the lottery and a dating show, going on a cruise, abandoning said cruise to avoid being assaulted by an older, heavier woman, then drifting aimlessly in a lifeboat, washing up on a resort island, jumping from a plane and landing in the jungle of a virgin tropical island, and all while evading the KGB and foiling the plot of an evil mastermind. The plot's extremely outlandish, but its scope makes for a nice change of pace going on this wild ride after the relative simplicity that was the first game. There are plenty of references which make it feel dated, from an airplane full of cigarette smoke, the Bond-esque baddie playing feelings in his volcano base, and even posters of the California raisins at the airport. Although I admit that the description you get when looking at the poster, those damn raisins are everywhere, it still makes me laugh. This was back in the era where sadistic adventure game developers loved punishing you for missing out on admittedly easy-to-miss items early on, later in the game. A prime example is in the lifeboat when Larry jettisons off the cruise and, without having a soda, a wig, and sunscreen, and even remembering to throw away an item in the newly spoiled spinach dip, you'll die and have to reload. I guess this was an easy way to increase gameplay, forcing players to find the one item they were missing, then getting back to the point where they lost, only to find out 2 seconds later there's another item they were missing, and starting over again and again like that. I guess no one testing the game back then realized how much people would come to loathe that someday, but still, Aside from some very frustrating moments like this, it's an interesting game. Number 4. Leisure Suit Larry 1. The game which started it all. Leisure Suit Larry 1, Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards. After Sierra lost the license they had to make Disney-themed games in the mid-80s, one of the game developers at Sierra, Al Lowe, figured it was as good a time as any to suggest making a graphically based, loose remake of an adult, text-based adventure game Sierra had released years earlier called Soft Porn Adventure. Company president at the time, Ken Williams, liked the idea, and Leisure Suit Larry was born. A fun fact, the series and protagonist got its name purportedly due to the fact that Al Lowe once remarked while during development of Leisure Suit Larry that Soft Porn Adventure was so outdated it might as well be wearing a leisure suit, hence the title. In it, you play as the titular leisure suit wearing protagonist with one of the noblest plots you'll find in an adventure game. You're about to turn 40 and you're still a virgin, so you want to change that. Wait a minute. Like most of the entry titles in Sierra's various popular series, the world was rather confined, the gameplay tight, and the solutions weren't too taxing. They didn't go for over-the-top plot or gags that the series would later become associated with, but that served this first game just fine. It's a formula which makes for a tidy and satisfying playthrough when you sit down with it, even today. Number 3. Leisure Suit Larry 6. Leisure Suit Larry 6 features my favorite opening to a Larry game. While checking out the ladies on Muscle Beach, Larry gets scoped out to be the predetermined loser contestant on a dating show, Stallions. After a funny sequence of Larry obliviously striking out on the show, he gets the consolation prize of a stay at the spa and resort La Costalada. There he hits on the various ladies, all named after alcoholic beverages this go-around, who are staying there, getting oh so close but striking out again and again as he always does in a variety of comical ways. At this point in the series, Al Lowe has completely embraced contrived wackiness for the sake of a laugh, and I entirely mean that as a compliment. You could argue he did the same thing in 5 given its outlandish plot, but it's a lot tighter and more purposeful in this game, and a whole lot funnier. The best and funniest thing about Leisure Suit Larry 6 is the introduction of voice acting to the series. The voice of Larry, Jan Rabson, may he rest in peace, is virtually single-handedly responsible for developing Larry's personality in my mind. His trademark happy-go-lucky, squeaky delivery of every line was so good in establishing Larry's character that I retroactively hear that voice in my head when I play the earlier games in the series.
My name is Larry. Larry Laffer.
This also might be my favorite game visually in the series. The SVGA graphics hit a really nice pocket while staying in that same world graphically as the older games, but improving upon and adding a lot more detail to the visuals. The camera placements on a lot of these screens alone is very cool and worth mentioning. Everything's very colorful, the inventory, menu, and dialogue systems are all well designed, and it's just all around a very solid game. Number 2. Leisure Suit Larry 3. Leisure Suit Larry 3 comes in at number 2 on this list of ranking the Leisure Suit Larry series. Larry 3 features what is easily the strongest and most serious plot in the series, at least as serious as a Leisure Suit Larry game can get. As usual, the game begins with his relationship from the end of the previous game in ruins. In this case, his marriage to Kahlua has fallen apart, and she's left him for a woman. Larry vows to get back to his swinging leisure suit wearing ways, with an excellent Superman parody, I might add, only to finally meet who is truly the woman of his dreams in the titular passionate Patty. Something I really appreciate about this game is that, at least for this one outing, Larry isn't the butt of every single joke. Sure, he's still the butt of probably 90% of the jokes, but genuinely, for the first time in the series, at least one character takes him seriously and gives him the respect he deserves in Patty. Admittedly, he's also never looked so good, as this is right before the animators did him dirty with what became his trademark cartoonish short man with a big head look of the second half of the series. Here, he's still got his hair on that realistically proportioned head of his from that hair treatment in Leisure Suit Larry 2, and he puts in the time at the gym in this game to get those titular pectorals. He's even theoretically a wealthy man after his divorce goes through and owning hundreds of acres of prime island real estate. Sure, he gives it all away to woo a lady because he's still Larry, but still. He even discovers that his ex-wife taught him more than he realized as he delivers the greatest sexual experience of both his and Patty's lives when they finally get together. Sorry, I know I'm off on a tangent here, but I'm just happy for Larry, and it's part of the reason this game stands out, and I love it as much as I do. But that's not to say that Larry 3 doesn't have its share of silly moments, including Larry carving beechwood into a well-endowed sculpture to sell to a tourist while dressed in a grass skirt, and Larry accidentally being forced to perform as a showgirl following a clothing mix-up after an aborted romantic rendezvous backstage. All of these silly moments help Larry develop into the man he needs to be to capture the affection of the greatest babe in Leisure Suit Larry history, Passionate Patty. After it seems that Larry and Patty have truly found happiness in each other for the first time in Larry's first genuinely romantic love scene, a misunderstanding sends Larry off into the jungle alone. In a display of how much he means to her, Patty follows after him, braving danger and breaking the fourth wall to finally rescue her man. It appears that the two will live happily ever after as the credits roll, and for the first time in the series, you don't get the sense that Larry's paramour is going to become disillusioned with him between games. She accepts him for who he is, flaws and all. He really could have ended the series right there, and knowing how much the next game missed the mark, especially from a plot point, you could argue they should have. But then we wouldn't have the best game in the series, in my opinion. Number 1. Leisure Suit Larry 7. How often does a series get to go out on its highest note? Practically never, because if a game is half decent, there's almost always going to be a sequel. Incidentally, a planned sequel to Love for Sale was in the works before Sierra's funding was cut in 1998, as their adventure games department was dissolved and Allo left the company. The plot is largely an afterthought at this point, as it opens with Larry barely escaping a fire at the spa from Leisure Suit Larry 6 and announcing to celebrate he's going on a cruise. On the PMS Bouncy, Larry enters a number of competitions to win the right to shack up with the gorgeous Captain Thigh at the end of the game. In entering each competition, it follows the typical Leisure Suit Larry formula as Larry strikes out in a variety of entertaining ways with a number of gorgeous secondary women en route to winning the overall prize and actually scoring at the end of the game with Captain Thigh. Admittedly, comedy is a subjective thing, but fans of that trademark Allo sense of humor will agree that 7 is one of, if not the funniest game in this comedy series. As with Larry 6, much of the humor is derived from the delivery of the various characters' lines through the hilariously satisfying voice acting.
This goddamn salt air is rusting me f***ing leg socket. Yeah. Who the hell are you?
My name is Larry. Larry Laffer.
Jan Rabson returned to provide Larry's trademark happy-go-lucky squeaky voice, and the situations he gets into are as zany and hysterical as any game in the series. It features one of my favorite bits, Larry repeatedly failing to get back to his room without embarrassment in the aftermath from his romantic escapades gone wrong. If there's any evidence that the series had reached its silliest and stupidest point, but in the best possible way, it's the inexplicable inclusion of the raunchy Where's Waldo parody, Where's Dildo?
Yeah, baby.
This game within the game is one of my favorite gags, as you're tasked with finding a red and white striped dildo that's tucked away on most screens. When the player finds said adult toy, they're treated to an energetic and, dare I say, inspiring, "Yeah baby," and a fun conga rhythm to accompany the dildo as it dances off the screen. The animations were as cartoonishly exaggerated as they had ever been in the series, but it fit the style and sense of humor of the series at that time perfectly. Incidentally, the ladies of a Larry game, whose names were all lusty takeoffs of female celebrities at the time, had never looked so good as they did in Love for Sale. The game also came packaged with a scratch and sniff pad, which featured 9 unique scents. The game would prompt you to sniff the accompanying square at different points in the game to give it an impressive extra bit of immersion. The novelty understandably didn't catch on in other games, but it's a cool way that Allo tried to keep adventure gaming fresh, even if some of the scents on that pad were anything but. Leisure Suit Larry 7 might be the only game of the major Sierra series which ended its respective series on its highest note, making it all the more disappointing that we were never treated to a proper Al Lowe-made follow-up. So there you have it, my ranking for the original Leisure Suit Larry series. Why not let me know exactly how wrong I am in the comments section below, and make sure to subscribe to Let's Play with Brigands for more top 10 videos and classic gaming live streams and playthroughs. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and comment on this video and click subscribe if you haven't already, as this seriously helps me to keep making great content for you. And check the description of this video to see what song is playing right now.